Good morning, everyone. My name is Trent Kaufman. I'm the CEO from Cicero Group, which is one of the organizations that has donated its time and energy and resources to SkillUpUtah. When we were asked to help lead on this, given our purpose, which is right over my shoulder here, impacting people, it was not a hard yes. And I'm personally very excited to be the spokesperson today, introducing something as impactful and important to the state as SkillUpUtah. I have just a few minutes to introduce the initiative to you before then turning the bulk of the time over to our distinguished community leaders who will share some remarks. They're really the lifeblood of this initiative anyway, so I just want to be brief. What I want to do is answer three questions that are likely on all of your minds. First, what is SkillUpUtah? Well, as simply as I can say it, we consider SkillUpUtah to be the last mile of the jobs and skills market, connecting unemployed, underemployed Utahns to short-term training options that employers are currently demanding. We also consider it an engine for economic recovery and a spark for innovation in the workforce development world. Second, how did it come to be? Well, this is actually a really good story I'm excited to share. Last summer, Senior Vice President at Western Governors University, Matt Sanders, came to Cicero with an idea. And what unfolded over the next few months was an amazing group of 9 education institutions, for-profit, not-for-profit, government-funded, not government-funded, online, on-site, infrastructure organizations, training organizations, education organizations. And we called ourselves United. And over the next few months, we convened, we brainstormed, we talked about how we could fulfill our purpose, which was to make education Utah's #1 export. And then COVID hit. And several very important community and business leaders, the likes of Jeremy Andrus at Traeger and folks from Silicon Slopes, helped articulate the need. And United jumped in. It actually culminated on a Friday afternoon in May. I called my good friend, Andrew Howlett, the CEO at Struck, and I asked him the favor of a lifetime. Will you help build a portal that will connect underemployed and unemployed Utahns to the most relevant training opportunities to help them get back to work productively? And he said, Trent, you've called the best creative agency in Utah. And I replied, well, I think our neighbors deserve the best. And we laughed, and Andrew jumped right in, allocating some of his best designers and coders to this project, donating enormous amounts of time, energy, and resources. And he did say that if we're going to meet our deadlines, he needed a wireframe of the website on Monday morning. So it was off to the races. And over the next 2 months, Cicero would help design, Struck would build, and United would offer iterative feedback. And along the way, many government agencies also chipped in to offer input and ideas. And isn't that just such a cool story of Utah coming together to do something innovative and impactful? Which leads to my final question. Why is it that we're all engaged in doing this? And that's kind of easy to articulate because it's the right thing. And it's what Utah does, come together to solve hard problems and collaborate in this way. And part of my excitement this morning is that already we have several other states looking to SkillUpUtah as the model for economic recovery and education, workforce development, transformation. So finally, let me end with a few quick logistics. If you have questions, especially those of members of the press, we have just over 100 participants, and several of you are, I think, hoping to write stories about this launch. Please submit those questions through the Q&A function. We'll aggregate those and then field those questions at the end. Another logistic, we are recording this webinar and can make it available to you if you'd like it. just reach out to Chase Christiansen from Cicero, and he'll put, if he hasn't already, he'll put his email address out there available for you all through the portal. Okay, well, with no further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. He's someone we know really well here at Cicero. He's been a colleague of ours here for a long time. Recent GOP primary winner, Blake Moore, the hopeful next congressman representing Utah's Congressional District 1. Blake has been doing a lot of listening on the campaign trail for the last few months, and I asked him to describe what he's seen and heard pertaining to jobs and skills. So Blake.
Thank you, Trent, and to the entire SkillUpUtah team for helping create such an incredibly relevant and needed initiative. If there's nothing else you hear me say today, this is the right time to really roll this out and make sure that this is available to our community. In response specifically to your question, while on the campaign trail, I actually hear two very consistent themes on the topic of jobs and the economy. I think you've all heard them over and over again, but I'll just quickly reiterate. One, we need to get back to work safely and quickly. Those two things are very important, obviously. And the job market, the second thing is that the job market is going to look different. It's going to be different going forward. SkillUpUtah addresses both. But with respect to that second item about what it ultimately looks like, what I appreciate most about this initiative is how proactive we're being. And you speak a little bit to it, Trent, but being proactive is going to be enormously helpful and important for this to be successful. The tool is simple, and if our community is willing to engage with it, then I'm confident that we'll see positive results come from this. Prior to the pandemic, there was already, and many of the experts on this call will be able to speak to it, but there was already plenty of movement towards ensuring that our education was in line with workforce needs. I even did several projects professionally on this, from funders to private organizations, wanting to make sure that we had the right skills for our workforce. But Utah needs to view this COVID-19 disruption, what I'll call it, as a real opportunity. We have to look at this as an opportunity to continue to lead in creating public and private partnerships that match workers with the jobs of the future, both along the Wasatch Front and obviously very important to my district as well, in rural Utah. I'll move to getting to hear from more of the experts on this, but I'll end with this. A few months ago, Representative Curtis released a memo communicating, and it was released by the chamber. He released a memo communicating a simple message of optimism, and it was at a time that we all needed to hear it. And I loved that, and I loved hearing the platform that he was able to use with that. And so I'll end with the same. This must be an opportunity for us to better our communities and our economic circumstances, and this tool can help us get there. So thanks again to everybody, all of the partners with SkillUpUtah, for providing this opportunity and making it so our folks can re-enter the workforce in a better position than they were before. And I view that as the ultimate goal. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Blake. Our next speaker is President Ruth Watkins from the University of Utah. President Watkins is such a gem for our state. We're so lucky to have her. She's known nationally for the U's dramatic improvements in degree completion. And we know her locally for a lot of things, but she's such a collaborator with the community and creates great coalitions and has done some really neat work innovating on student finance. Unfortunately, President Watkins was unable to join us live, so she's produced a short video for us to be able to watch. We all know that video over Zoom is not perfect, so we'll give it a good college try, and we will also make this video available to others afterwards if it doesn't work great on Zoom. President Watkins.
At the University of Utah, we're thrilled to be a part of the SkillUpUtah effort. The coronavirus pandemic has upended our lives in virtually every way: work, worship, education, economy, our ability to connect with family and friends. It's also disrupted about 150,000 Utahns who are now either unemployed or underemployed. We must help those individuals get back to work and get into Utah's vibrant economy again. The Skill Up Utah effort is designed to help us do that. Short-term credentials in areas specifically of high demand now, from certificates to one-year graduate programs, all ways to help Utahns succeed in the new economy. At the University of Utah, we are particularly focused on high demand areas where workers are particularly needed: technology, business, health, and a variety of areas related to managing diversity and working with people. We hope to attract and help support individuals as they return to work in Utah's economy. We're delighted to be part of the Skill Up Utah effort.
Great. Thanks, President Watkins, for recording that video. Our next speaker is Clark Gilbert, President of BYU Pathways Worldwide, BYU Pathway Worldwide. President Gilbert is a well-known innovator in business and education and is leading BYU Pathway Worldwide to become one of the fastest growing and largest and most impactful education providers in the world. In fact, they're currently serving tens of thousands of students through 529 different locations in 81 different countries. President Gilbert.
Thank you, Trent. It's good to be with you today. We're excited to be part of the Skill Up Utah effort for probably 3 specific areas where BYU Pathway feels like we can be a resource to the state of Utah. The first is just a long history of online leadership, which works particularly well given the face of the pandemic and some of the constraints we have to physical gathering. In the state of Utah, we have 10,000 students, 50,000 students actually worldwide. The second thing we really have tried to prioritize for our students is what we call certificate first. This is not certificate only, and it's not bachelor's only. It's a sequential model of putting certificates in front of students up front, and I'll just share a screen and show a graphic of that. But this is a simple summary of what's happened in many traditional approaches to education. All of the value of a college degree happens late in the student's experience. But at BYU Pathway, we've tried to not only straighten that line, but invert it. And so students get the value of a certificate right in their first year, but rather than be a freestanding experience, not only do you get the accelerated value, but you're stacking and counting all of those credits towards your degree. And this relates to the third area where I think BYU Pathway hopes to help at this time, which is Utah's at-risk populations. A certificate first model really is geared to lower income, first generation populations who often don't make it to a completion rate that we would find acceptable in most circles. By putting the certificate first, not only do we accelerate value for students into that first year, but we actually raise the probability, particularly for at-risk populations, to complete their degrees. And at BYU Pathway, our certificate approach has disproportionately helped with our outreach to Hispanic communities, to women going back to complete degrees, and to people who are upskilling and trying to improve their opportunity in the workforce in a quick way that lets them get right back to an improved job.
Great, thank you, President Gilbert. We'll next hear from Commissioner Dave Wolstenhume and Associate Commissioner Jessica Gilmore, both with the Utah System of Higher Education, governed by the newly created Higher Education Board here in Utah. Dave and Jessica have been instrumental collaborators on Skill Up Utah. We're so grateful. They're courageous leaders. They're paving new ground for connecting higher ed with workforce needs. And so excited to hear from Commissioner Wolstenhume and Associate Commissioner Gilmore.
Thanks, Trent. We appreciate the opportunity to be involved with SkillUpUtah. I am actually in the middle of working with all 16 of our higher ed institutions, both our technical institutions and our degree granting institutions, to design responsive, short-term training available to our Utahns to help them get the skills that they need to get right back to work. We're really focused on unemployed, underemployed, and those vulnerable workers who need to have an additional skill to make sure that they stay employed through the length of this pandemic and beyond. So all 16 institutions have just been creatively attacking this problem and are just about ready to launch programming that will be available. So we're hopeful that all of those programs can help ensure that our Utahns get the skills that they need to get and stay employed in the near future. Dave, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Jess has been busy lately trying to, obviously through the CARES Act monies, we got about $9 million that allows our institutions to do what Jess just talked about, really be able to think creatively. And SkillUpUtah, Trent, has done a wonderful job of helping us to identify the skills that, and really be able to look at what is it that the industry really needs today, right? To be able to get these employees back to work. I love what Blake mentioned earlier, the fact that this is a time where we can really start to think about what should education look like in the future. And I applaud all 16 of our institutions. Trent mentioned that we just went through a structural change. Now we have the tech colleges as well as the community colleges and universities all within one system, which really allows us to look strategically about how we provide stackable or dynamic credentials to make sure that it's meeting the needs of our industry partners. One of the new things we're really excited about is under the new statute that connects one board that's over all 16 institutions, we have an industry advisory committee that we made up of the local individuals in the communities from different industries that will really help the board drive and help our institution drive what it is that these employers are looking for, such as exactly what SkillUpUtah is doing, to be able to connect those dots. And it's been a great tool for us the last little while. Trent, we applaud Cicero on the work that they've done there. And what was mentioned, Utah really come together to solve a problem. I think that's when we're all at our best, right? Is when there's a big problem in front of us and we all have to come together and work, and it's something we're really well known for, but it took Cicero to lead out on this and to help us understand how important and critical this is. So again, we applaud them. I want everybody to know that all 16 institutions are involved in this process. Even as you heard President Watkins talk about the University of Utah, some people may say, well, they may not be very involved in short-term training. Wrong. They've been very involved with the short-term training and trying to identify how do we do these micro-credentialing? How do we take a graduate that may be underemployed and give them some short-term training to make sure they're in a better career path. So again, we applaud them all. And Trent, we really appreciate Cicero Group. We've done several other projects with you, and the quality that comes out of there is just amazing. And we continue to look for great partnerships.
Well, speaking of leadership, really grateful. I might be muted. There we go. Speaking of leadership, really grateful to Jessica and Dave and the USHE team for the leadership that they're providing. Well, finally, it's my privilege to introduce our last speaker, Astrid Tumines, President of Utah Valley University. Like the other leaders who have spoken today, President Tumines has a storied career, not just in academia, but also in business. So she brings an academic perspective for sure, but even more than that, to issues like the workforce development issue that we're discussing today. And President Tumines is continuing to push UVU on a torrid pace of innovation and impact for the state. It's really fun to watch. So I'm excited to finish our distinguished group of speakers with President Tumines from UVU.
Thank you very much, Trent, for that gracious introduction. I know I have 10 minutes. I've got my wristwatch here to time myself. I want to make three sets of comments today. The first is about the profound change in the nature of work. Second, I want to talk about reframing education and employment in the United States. And third, I want to talk about the power of the university from UVU's vantage point. So it's probably a cliche now to talk about the profound nature, the profound change in the nature of work because of what people call the fourth industrial revolution, but it's a very real thing. I think this is where we can situate what SkillUpUtah is doing because of technology. The pace of change and the acceleration of change is tremendous. And one of my favorite examples to illustrate this is a story that we used to tell at Microsoft. And I worked for Microsoft in 1905. 25% of the United States agricultural output was used to feed horses because we had horses and buggies. And 20 years later, horses had entirely disappeared. That entire line of work had disappeared. That entire industry had disappeared. And you had new industries coming up, like the consumer finance industry. So we are at this point in time when there's a lot of change, but also a lot of opportunity. And it's very discombobulating on many levels, but I think we need to remember that we are positioned to not just navigate, but harness all of these changes to improve lives and to improve the economy of Utah. Second, reframing education and employment. I think it is a yes to making the linkage more transparent between education and work from the start of the student experience. But we don't stop there. The student is not an automaton that we're just processing to become a worker, to become a cog somewhere. We also yes to broader, deeper, greater education, whether it's about history, democracy, learning how to communicate, how to collaborate, to have empathy in the age of artificial intelligence. I also think that we need to strengthen ties between education and industry and make that more explicit because synergy is very possible there. When I was in academia, I was very biased against the private sector. I kind of thought these were people with no souls until I had 10 years in the private sector and learned that they had more information, more agility, and more technology than academia. So I really came to respect what they did. And then finally, I think we need to understand local, national, and global dynamics. And I learned a lot of these lessons from Singapore, where I lived for 10 years. Blake Morris and this scholar also lived in Singapore. And what I mean by that is how do you compete? How do you understand your own local dynamics and local assets, and how do you compete in the broader world? When certain skills become outmoded, how do you learn what new skills your people need so that if they get laid off, they can get another job? If they have to move, where can they move? Finally, my last point on the power of the university from the vantage point of UVU. This September, I will have been 2 years on this job, and I think right now I can summarize the strengths that the university brings in 3 ways, talking specifically about UVU. And we are very proud to be partnered with SkillUpUtah. First is the open admission and nature of UVU. I kind of chuckle these days that because of the pandemic, top universities are actually removing the SAT and ACT requirement. And I like to say, oh, they're just following what UVU has been doing for a long time. But open admission is so important because people do want a job, but you want them to get better jobs. And I think when we say come as you are, UVU as a place for you, we're telling people you can come here and learn something and go out and be able to lead a more productive and dignified life, get a better job, have access to economic opportunity. The second strength of this institution is its dual mission as a community college and teaching university. We have been job focused since 1941 when we started as a tech college, helping in the wartime effort. There's flexibility, choice, and multiple pathways at UVU. We don't care about your past. We only care about where you are now and where you want to go. And I think having the range of options from 6-month certificates, associate's degrees. I love what Clark Gilbert just said about pathways. Certificate is great. It's valid. You go move to the world with it and do something with it through your associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees. Finally, I think that UVU is very privileged to be in an ecosystem that's supportive. Here in Utah, we have a culture that values education. We have legislators that still fund education. We have a thriving industry here with Silicon Slopes. So what is the data behind all of these things that I'm saying about UVU? So if you look at jobs in the 5-year period from 2013 2014 to 2018, 2019, UVU produced 1,152 graduates for what Utah calls 4- and 5-star jobs. These are high demand, high pay, or sometimes not so good pay, but high demand. So that means being a social worker or a teacher or an educator. Some of the very popular majors and specializations in these 4- and 5-star jobs, I'll just rattle them off here. Financial planning, substance use disorder counseling, pre-engineering, nursing, mechatronics, robotic technologies, mechanical engineering, computer science, nursing, dental hygiene. Now, when the state of Utah invests in UVU, this investment is taken very seriously. The wonderful thing is that 85% of our graduates are still in Utah 1 year out, and 76% are still here in Utah 10 years out. Every dollar invested in this university yields $8 in return to the economy. And UVU in the system has the highest return on equity measured as the ratio of a person's salary when they graduate to the average cost of their education. And of course, we don't do this alone. We have amazing partners. My former colleague, Jess Gilmore, is here. She knows about our terrific partnership with Mountain Land Technology. And today we are in conversations with the other tech colleges, UB Tech, Davis, Bridgerland, Dixie Tech, etc. And the partnerships between the university and the technical colleges is crucial, because what we're saying is every tax dollar invested isn't lost, whether that's invested in a tech college or UVU, because students there can articulate from the college to UVU. So we have to date signed 9 articulations between MTech and UVU, including majors like IT, mobile development, nursing, culinary arts, dental hygiene, EMT, automotive, and we are now working on other articulations that involve a new Associate of Applied Science degree in health professions. So that means an MTech student studying surgical technology, medical assisting, or medical billing can use those hours, and they translate into academic degrees in an academic program at UVU. We are also working on another articulation for entrepreneurship, again from MTech into a non-credit pathway at UVU through our Small Business Development Center, or an academic pathway through our Associates of Applied Science in Business Management. So I think where we come in with SkillUpUtah is that how we make things work is through these types of partnerships, being really deliberate about how to leverage all of the strengths and resources that we have as organizations to truly invest in people and re-energize the economy. When I talk about 42,000 enrolled students at UVU, I like to remind people that these are not abstract numbers. 42,000 people. I grew up in a family with 7 kids, and my father earned less than $50 a month. It was practically impossible to live a dignified, productive life. And if not for my education, I couldn't have done the things that I was able to do. So when we educate, we reskill and upskill, and we're unprejudicial about whether that is a bachelor's degree or a PhD or a 6-month certificate. When we are non-prejudicial, I believe we can help people, families, taxpayers. We will outlive the pandemic. It will be over. We will have a vibrant economy, and we can continue thriving in the great state of Utah. I'm exactly 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Trent.
Great. Thank you so much, President Tuminez. And as a real treat, if you haven't gone to the UVU leadership page and taken a look at a recent video that was taken of President Tuminez visiting the village where she grew up in the Philippines, you need to do so. There's a video from her mom, or an interview of her mom, that will likely make you a little misty-eyed. So thank you so much for your leadership and the great remarks. We do have a few questions, and then I've just got a minute of closing remarks. A couple excellent questions. The first is, your website shows a lot of options. Is there any guidance or counseling available to help match job seekers with training opportunities? It's a great question. So a couple things I'd say. First, the main sorting feature in on the website is by industry. So you can narrow your list of in-demand skills by selecting an industry that you have a focus on or an interest in. And that will typically get you down to, 4 or 5 skills that are highest in demand in your industry. And then for each of those skills, there'll be several education opportunities. And we'd encourage you to explore those and think through the variables involved. Some of them are free, some of them are not. Some of them are 2 hours long, some of them are 2 weeks long, some of them are 2 years long. So there's some variables to consider. In terms of actual guidance, we do have a mentorship program that is available on the website. You can sign up both to be a mentor or a mentee. And so we're hopeful that as this gets out and more users will be able to match the users with mentors in their field. And we would hope that those mentors who are currently working in those fields can help provide some of that counseling and guidance to prospective students. And then finally, I'd say the growth of SkillUpUtah over time, we hope to include more features that allow a narrowing of the focus, especially narrowing on actual jobs available. And those are plans for our future, and I think that'll help provide some of the narrowing features that this member of the media is asking about. Another question, and Associate Commissioner Gilmore, I'll ask for your help on this too, to maybe share a little bit about the Learn and Work in Utah initiative that Commissioner Wilson-Hume mentioned with the funding from the state. So I'll give you a few moments notice there. The next question is about, it's a question about like how many slots are available, what's the cost and time commitment of those participating. And I think there's another question that I can answer by addressing this question. This is not the NBA bubble, meaning we're not asking you to come and participate in a very controlled program. This resource was created to point individuals to various resources that they can go to skill up. So it's not a set program or a set curriculum. It's a centralized hub of curated resources available to unemployed and underemployed. And in terms of like cost, all building the tool, creating the tool, launching the tool was all produced through the donation of time from a variety of organizations. So there is no fee associated with SkillUpUtah. The courses range in cost. Some of them are free and some are discounted, and those fees go directly to the training provider. There's no kind of middleman involved in this. Associate Commissioner Gilmore can elaborate a little bit more that over the next few months, there will be more and more programs available to students that will be available to working adults who need to upskill, and we'll make those very clear and transparent on SkillUpUtah. But USHE is really leading out on this initiative with funding from the state. So more and more free opportunities to train. So I want to hand it over to Associate Commissioner Gilmore, who can just explain a little bit more about what's coming in the next few months in Learn and Work in Utah.
Thanks, Trent. Appreciate that. So the legislature has allocated $9 million to our higher education institutions to produce and implement the short-term training targeted for unemployed, underemployed, and vulnerable workers. The majority of that funding will go towards scholarships to students. If students or prospective students have been affected by COVID-19 in any way, it's obviously a really difficult time to allocate any of the limited funding that they have in their family budget towards education to get the skills necessary to take the next step in their employment endeavors. So the legislature has allocated those $9 million, and we're in the process of pushing those dollars out to the individual institutions. Each institution has been asked to do a scan of their service region and identify programming appropriate to the employment needs of their region. So the short-term training that will be available to students will be targeted for employers who've seen need during this pandemic and in the near future, so that students will be trained in the skills necessary to obtain the jobs that will be in demand in the coming months. Again, that $9 million, the bulk of that money is targeted for scholarships to defray the cost of tuition, cost of short-term training, books and materials to ensure that students who've been affected by the COVID-19 have the ability to get the skills that they need for those in-demand jobs. So those will be coming soon in the next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. And as they become available, they'll be present on SkillUpUtah, and you'll be able to find them there as well as other places. The last question we'll address is about participating organizations. A good question about there are other training providers and education institutions in the state that don't currently have short-term program offers on the website, and that is simply a matter of how much time we gave institutions to turn around these sorts of innovative opportunities. This is a movement we're starting. I'll talk about that here at the end. And we're asking, there's a place on SkillUpUtah for providers to make offers. And the curation process is about, it's got to be a high quality training. It's got to match what employers are asking for, and it's got to be affordable. And if you meet those qualifications, you can definitely get on SkillUpUtah and be able to make connections with under and unemployed Utahns that way. And encourage all institutions who have offers to bring them to the table, and it's available to do so on the website. Okay, well, I think we've answered the bulk, if not all, of the questions. Just want to say a few closing things. I want to, of course, thank everyone for coming and participating. We had a nice group today. Really grateful for that. And I want to end with a quick anecdote. Back on that Friday when I called Andrew at Struck, I went home that night and had a great conversation with my family and about it. And you see, at the time, we were going to call it SkillUpUtah. And my daughter, my 15-year-old daughter, super smart, asked what she thought was a grammatical question, but ended up being very important to the project. She asked, Dad, would it be grammatically correct to switch those two first words and have it be SkillUpUtah? And when she said it, it really clicked for me that that's the right message, because what we're beginning here is not an offering of a service. We're beginning a movement, and that the use of skill as a verb as well helps communicate that. We're calling on all education providers, as I said, to come to the table and make short-term training options available at low to no cost that align with what employers are demanding right now. We're calling on employers to engage, continue to communicate via the website what are the skills you're looking for, and offer mentoring and other resources. And there are multiple ways that employers can help via SkillUpUtah. And of course, we're calling on all Utahns. Help us lead proactively through the economic transition that we're going through. And thanks to my daughter, I get to end by a call for action, which is, I'd encourage us, Utah, to skill up. Thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate your time and excited to see where this goes together.